r/nosleep. Posted by u/Carl1961. I had a near-death experience when I was 15. I know the truth about the afterlife. It's more terrifying than you can imagine. Part 7. Friends. 1 to 6 parts, of story video, link in description. Please check out. The second the door opened, the stench of gasoline and burning flesh overwhelmed me, stinging my nostrils. A pile of blackened bodies lay scattered around the door, some still burning, most of them still moving slightly. The ones that were dead, well, really dead, had already liquefied. Puddles of burning gasoline were everywhere. The air was thick with smoke. "Go," I shouted at Dante, who quickly shoved Jeff's wheelbarrow through the door. I paused for a split second behind him so I could yell up the ladder and through the trapdoor in the ceiling, "Hurry up, Aaron." Then I raced after them. Dante wheeled Jeff down the back of the Walmart in the direction of the parking lot. Jeff was sitting up in the wheelbarrow with his handgun raised in front of him. I glanced behind me and saw a group of residents coming around the other end of the store and heading in our direction. "Hurry up," I shouted to Dante. "Moving as fast as I can," he yelled back to me. We reached the edge of the building and turned the corner. Most of the horde was still congregated in front of the store, but there were still several dozen scattered across the far end of the parking lot. Dante pushed Jeff ahead of him in a wild dash, dodging around the corpses, skirting the main parking lot, racing towards the highway. I was right behind Dante. I felt something grab me from behind. A corpse had a hold of me, clutching my backpack. Life. I tried to pull away, but its grip was too strong. Hate life. I quickly slid out of the backpack straps and left it behind. Another corpse lunged at the wheelbarrow and Jeff fired his pistol, blasting it in the head. The gunshot alerted the horde and instantly they turned as a whole, spotting us. Life. Hate living. They began screaming in unison, and charged in our direction. They were no more than 100 yards away. "Oh, shit!" I screamed, panicked. The crowd surged towards us, closing the distance. There was no way we could outrun them. I knew we were about to die. Suddenly something arched through the air with a streak of flame. Glass shattered on the pavement and a fireball erupted between us and the horde, causing them to draw back fearfully. I looked around and saw Aaron sprinting towards us, fumbling in his backpack for another Molotov cocktail. "Move your asses!" He screamed at us, turning with a Bic lighter in one hand and a Molotov in the other. He quickly lit it and hurled it at the horde. Another fireball splashed up, separating the mass of homicidal walking cadavers from us. I felt a fleeting sense of relief to see Aaron had made it. He caught up with us, panting. "That was my last one, hurry the fuck up, we gotta get out of here." We were about 3/4 of the way to the front end of the parking lot, nearly home free. For a second I thought we were going to be okay. Then I spotted the huge pothole in the pavement directly in front of Dante and Jeff. Dante, in a blind panic, was heading right for it. "Look out," I shouted, but it was too late. Dante drove Jeff's wheelbarrow right into the pothole. The wheelbarrow overbalanced and turned over, spilling Jeff and the supplies piled around him onto the ground. He screamed as his injured ankle struck the asphalt. "Oh fuck," Aaron shouted. Him and me ran to help. "We gotta get him back in," Dante screamed. He and Aaron began reaching down to grab Jeff. Hate life. Hate living. Hate life. Hate living. I spun around. My heart sank. The flames were already dying down and the horde had resumed its relentless pursuit. The closest was only about 30 yards away. Some of them were in flames, but they pushed on, regardless. "They're coming," I shouted to the others. Dante and Aaron looked. "We gotta go, now," Dante said grimly. "We can't leave Jeff." Aaron screamed at him. "No," Jeff hissed through clenched teeth, a grimace of pain fixed on his face. "Dante's right. There isn't enough time. I fucked. Leave me and save your own asses." "The fuck we will," Aaron yelled at him. Jeff pointed his pistol in Aaron's face. Aaron froze in shock. Jeff spoke in a very calm but intense voice. "I'm not asking, I'm telling. Leave me and go. Better one of us die than all four. Now go." Aaron looked at me and Dante. There was a look of mournful resignation on his face. "Let's get the fuck out of here." "I'll try to hold them back," Jeff said, raising his pistol to the fast approaching horde. The three of us ran across the remaining stretch of parking lot, back onto the street we had come in on. There weren't many residents on the street. Behind us I heard Jeff firing his pistol repeatedly. Then he stopped shooting and began to scream. I threw a final look back. I still wish I hadn't. They had surrounded Jeff and were beginning to tear him apart. I saw Jeff, in final desperation, raise the pistol to his own temple. He pulled the trigger, click. The gun was empty. We ran, Jeff's dying, agonized screams following after us until he fell silent. For a while after Jeff's death, everything was kind of a disordered blur. My memory of the immediate aftermath of our escape is hazy and jumbled from the terror and the shock of losing one of our number in such a brutal, horrific manner. I remember Dante stopping and turning to face the corpses, screaming and shouting incoherently and emptying his shotgun into the horde, racking the slide and pulling the trigger on an empty chamber, over and over, crying hysterically, until Aaron slapped him to bring him back to his senses. I remember a resident that was hardly more than a skeleton in the tattered remains of what looked to have once been the uniform of a Civil War Union soldier trying to ambush us from behind a parked car as we ran by it. Aaron simply clubbed it aside with his shotgun. We ran for our lives, the mob of undead maniacs pursuing us all the while. Somehow, at some point, we lost them and managed to escape town and get back on the open road. Posted by you/Carl1961. I had a near-death experience when I was 15. I know the truth about the afterlife. It's more terrifying than you can imagine. Part 8. When we finally felt safe, for the time being anyway, we halted in the middle of the road, winded and gasping, to catch our breath. I glanced back toward the town but there was no sign of them. I doubled over and began to retch. I felt like I was going to vomit but could only dry heave. There was nothing in my stomach to regurgitate. The last meal I had eaten had been the breakfast my mother had made for me the day before. It dawned on me suddenly that had been the last meal I had consumed in the mortal world. And probably the last meal I would ever consume, period. Dante was still weeping quietly. We left him, we fucking left him. He kept repeating. Aaron tried to console him. He wanted us to leave him, Dante. It's my fault. I wasn't paying attention. Even if you hadn't hit that pothole, Aaron told him, there's no way we could have wheeled him fast enough to outrun them. We all would have died. Jeff knew the risk when he volunteered. We all did. I don't know how much more of this shit I can take, Dante admitted. I don't know why we're even bothering to try. I just want it to be over. We have to stay alive, Aaron told him adamantly. We have to fight. As long as we possibly can. You know what the alternative is. Maybe we really are dead, Aaron. You ever think of that? Maybe this is hell. Me and Aaron looked at him. Neither of us said anything. Did you see what was painted on the side of the church when we were running back through town? Dante asked us. What? Aaron asked, confused. There was a message painted in black on the side of the church. Probably by some poor bastard who was stuck here before us. We didn't see it the first time because it was facing the other direction. But I saw it when we were running. After Jeff died. He looked at us. Neither of you saw it? Aaron and I looked at each other and shook our heads. We had been too busy running for our lives to notice. No, I said. What was it? It said, God has abandoned us, Dante said. I felt a chill creep up my spine. Aaron glanced up at the darkening gray sky. He looked worried. We better get moving, he said. I doubt we've got even an hour left before it gets dark. There's no way we'll get back to the police station before nightfall, I pointed out. The kid's right, Dante said, there's not enough time. We'll just have to use lanterns to ward off the lurkers, Aaron said. I just hope the light doesn't attract any residents on the way. We started on the return journey to the police station. The fading light grew dimmer and dimmer. It might have been twilight but it was hard to judge the time without the sun to use for reference. As the light failed and night began to descend I felt an increasing sense of existential dread and fear. I felt how I imagine a hunted animal might feel when it detects the scent of an approaching predator. I seemed to sense something coming awake in the encroaching darkness, seemed to feel the air becoming heavier, pressing down on us with a malevolent presence, something just beyond human perception, something that was coming for us. Let's get the lanterns going, Aaron said, stopping and turning to Dante. Yeah, sure, Dante said, removing his backpack and unpacking 3 battery-powered Coleman LED lanterns. Please tell me you've got some batteries, Aaron said to him. You bet, Dante said, taking out a pack of D batteries. He quickly loaded the batteries into the lanterns and switched them on. I was relieved when we were bathed in a circle of bright white illumination. I seemed to feel that presence recoil from us, repelled by the light. Here, Dante said, handing me a lantern. How much further to the station? I asked Aaron as we resumed walking. Maybe another hour if we don't encounter any residents, he told me. Something occurred to me. I remembered something from earlier. Hey, Aaron, I said, Back when we were in town trying to get away from those things, one of them looked like it was wearing a Civil War soldier uniform. He chuckled dryly. Maybe the guy was into reenactments when he was alive and was buried in his costume. Or maybe he was a real Civil War soldier. Really? I said, surprised. You think that's possible? Why the fuck not? Who knows how long Deadland's been around? It's not just the recently dead who show up here. Lost souls from all eras. But why is everything else so modern around here? Why are there gas stations and Walmarts and... Kid, he interrupted me, getting annoyed, there's no point in questioning anything about this fucking place. In case you haven't noticed, there's not a lot of rhyme or reason here. Why are the cars all dead and there's no electricity but bullets and batteries still work? Why do candles and gasoline still burn? If you ask yourself too many questions, if you really stop and think about how illogical this all is, you'll drive yourself crazy. Believe me, I've seen it happen. He had a point. We walked in silence for a while, Dante behind us. Aaron, I said, I have a personal question for you, if you don't mind me asking. Ask, but don't expect an answer. Why did you try killing yourself? He didn't answer me right away. I wondered if maybe I'd stepped out of line. We walked for a couple more minutes, then he sighed and said, all right. I'll tell you. I had a girlfriend. I guess we were in love. Maybe I would have even eventually gotten around to marrying her. She was pregnant with my kid. She wanted to keep it but I wasn't ready yet. I wanted her to get rid of it. We argued, she slapped me, I lost my cool and slapped her back. She left me. Had an abortion. Met someone else. I got depressed, became a drunk. Lost my job. All my friends and family bailed out on me when I needed them. I was getting evicted from my apartment so I just said fuck it and put my belt around my neck in the closet. End of story. He turned and looked at me. Happy now? I'm sorry, I muttered. So am I, but it doesn't change anything. I'm still here and so are you. Saying I'm sorry is the cheapest sentiment in the world. It and a buck will get you a cup of coffee. I didn't know what to say to that. We continued on our way. It was almost fully dark now. A while later, Aaron halted and motioned for me and Dante to stop. He peered into the darkness. Something up ahead, he whispered to us, then took his binoculars out of his jacket. What good are those going to do in the dark? I whispered. These aren't the ones I used before, he explained. I picked these up while we were at Walmart. They have night vision. Thought they might come in handy. He raised his new binoculars and peered through them. Shit. It's that farmhouse we passed earlier. Great, I murmured sarcastically. We definitely can't walk by it with the lanterns. They'll spot us for sure. And we sure as fuck can't turn them off, not until we get back inside the station. So what, the cornfield again? I suggested. You got it, he told me. We got off the road and once again skirted the farmhouse using the cornfield for cover. We got past the farmhouse and back onto the highway without incident. I looked up at the night sky. It was a solid, inky black unlike any I had ever seen, unbroken by stars or clouds. There was no sign of the moon. It was alien and frightening. I felt like I was standing on a different planet. Sometime later I heard Dante, still behind us, groan oh shit, with a sound of dread in his voice. Me and Aaron turned around. Dante was looking at the lantern in his hand. It had begun to flicker very lightly. He looked at us, scared. The batteries are dying. Shit, I hissed, already? Finding good batteries is a crap shot in dead land, Aaron told me. You never know how old they are. They usually don't last for long. That's why we go through them so fast. Have you got any more in your pack? I asked Dante. Fuck no. I thought Aaron was the one who was supposed to stock up on batteries. I turned to Aaron, who looked at me gravely. I dumped out most of the batteries in my pack to make room for those Molotov cocktails. What about you, kid? I shook my head. I lost my pack to those things when we made a run for it. What about candles? Aaron asked Dante. Yeah, I got boxes of those, he answered. If the batteries in the lanterns start to go bad, we'll just have to switch to candles, he said. Dante, stay close to us in case your lantern goes out. We kept walking. A few minutes later I heard Dante yell shit. And looked around. His lantern had died. He threw it away in disgust and we moved on, Dante being careful to stay within the circle of light from Aaron's and my lanterns. Not long after that, Aaron's lantern began to flicker just like Dante's had. Fuck, Aaron muttered. Look, I said, pointing. Just ahead of us was the manhole we had emerged from earlier that day, marked with the big orange X Aaron had painted. Dante laughed with relief. Hot damn, we're in the home stretch now. Aaron sat down his faltering lantern, knelt, and used his crowbar to pry up the manhole cover. You first, kid, he said, indicating me. I put the handle of my lantern in my mouth and climbed down into the sewer. Dante was right behind me. At the top, Aaron, his own lantern clamped between his teeth, slid the manhole cover back in place and descended the ladder. As he reached the bottom, his lantern, which had begun to flicker rapidly while he was still moving the manhole cover, suddenly dimmed, then went out altogether, leaving only mine. Motherfucker, Aaron snapped angrily and threw it away. He turned to Dante. Let's have those candles now before the kid's lantern conks out. Dante took a box of them out of his backpack and we each removed one. Aaron fumbled out his Bic lighter and flicked the wheel. It sparked, but didn't light. He tried it again. And again. Oh fuck, no, are you fucking kidding me? He moaned with rising panic as he first shook the lighter, then whacked it against his leg before trying once again to light it without success. He looked at me and Dante, scared. Out of fuel. I looked at Dante. You got a lighter? Or matches? Dante, his eyes wide, shook his head. How far are we from the police station? I asked Aaron. Just a couple miles. We can make it, I said. We've still got my lantern. And no sooner had I spoken, as if to mock our plight, my lantern began to flicker unsteadily as the batteries started to fail. Posted by you/Carl 1961. I had a near-death experience when I was 15. I know the truth about the afterlife. It's more terrifying than you can imagine. Part 9. Run, Aaron shouted at me and Dante, stay as close together as you can and run. Run as fast as you fucking can. Don't slow down for nothing. And so we did. Once again we ran, not just for our lives this time but also for our very souls. We ran as if all of hell's demons were chasing us, and perhaps they were. Aaron led the way, relying on his memory to navigate the sewer system because there was no time to stop and consult his map. A left here, a right there, me and Dante racing behind him. I could only hope he was going the right way. If we got lost down here before the lantern gave out. The lantern in my hand was flicking more rapidly as the batteries weakened. I don't know how much longer it would last. Any second I expected it to go out, plunging us into total darkness. Then I would see those red eyes all around me, would feel the shadow lurkers surrounding me, closing in. This way, Aaron yelled, pointing down a junction in the sewer tunnel, this is it. Less than a mile. We can make it. We turned into a narrow tunnel I remembered from when we had first set out earlier that day. Dante was behind me. I could hear him panting with exertion as he struggled to keep up. Several hundred yards later, I saw it materializing directly ahead of us. The ladder to the police station parking garage. Salvation. We're almost there. Aaron screamed. Behind me, I heard Dante cry out in alarm. I spun around. I could dimly see Dante, in shadow, lying face first on the filthy sewer floor. He had slipped or tripped over something. He sat up and began to get to his feet. He had fallen just beyond the reach of the lantern's light. I started forward, to bring him back into the circle of safety, but it was already too late. The darkness around him came to life, hundreds of black hands seizing him with the speed of a rattlesnake striking. I could see the lantern's light glinting in Dante's terrified eyes. A glimpse that lasted only a second. The next he was gone. There was nothing there, not a single sign that he had ever been there. He never even had time to scream. I stood there, looking on in numb shock. Aaron, standing just behind me, had also witnessed Danny's end. He's gone, he said to me, there's nothing we can do. Come on, we have to keep going. We ran to the ladder. Aaron scrambled up it and began to pound on the underside of the manhole cover. Clark! He screamed in desperation, Clark, it's us. Open up. Hurry, for God's sake, there's not much time. I put the lantern's handle between my teeth and climbed up after Aaron. I could faintly hear a scraping sound as Clark moved aside the wheelbarrow weighted down with cinder blocks. Then the manhole cover was lifted and Clark's kerosene lantern bathed me and Aaron in its protective glow. Aaron climbed out of the sewer. I was right behind him. As I got to my feet, the battery-powered lantern gripped in my mouth flickered a final time, dimmed, then died. I threw the dead lantern down into the sewer. Clark looked at me and Aaron, wide-eyed and relieved. Jesus, thank God you're back. You guys were gone so long, Nadine and me were starting to think. He trailed off. He regarded me and Aaron, then looked expectantly at the manhole leading down into the sewer. He looked for several seconds, then looked back to Aaron, his expression becoming somber with realization. Dante? Jeff? Aaron didn't answer him. Neither did I. We didn't need to. Our expression said it all. Clark lowered his head and his shoulders sagged with understanding. God, he whispered. Close the fucking manhole, Clark, then let's get back upstairs, Aaron told him. Clark pushed the manhole cover back in place and replaced the wheelbarrow. Nadine was sitting on her cot with her legs drawn up, knees under her chin, staring into space, her face drawn and anxious, as Aaron and I entered the police chief's office. She looked at us and reacted, first startled, then relieved. She sprung to her feet. You made it, she said, sounding happy for the first time since I had met her. Two of us made it, Aaron corrected her bleakly as he sat down on his cot. Clark entered behind us and shut the door. Nadine's happy expression collapsed in an instant and her morose demeanor returned as it sank in. She was silent for several long moments. Dante and Jeff? Gone, Aaron told her flatly. She lowered her head into her hands. What about supplies? Clark asked Aaron anxiously. How did you guys make out? At this, Aaron emitted a shrill, protracted sound that could have been either a wail of despair or the stark, humorless laugh of someone at the very edge of reason. He removed his backpack and dumped out what was left in it, all we had to show for our expedition. A single box containing 10 emergency candles. That was all. 10 candles. That was what Jeff and Dante had sacrificed their lives for and what Aaron and I had risked our own over. 10 fucking candles. 10 candles that might offer us protection from the shadow lurkers for 3 days and surely no more than 4, and that was if we were lucky. 10 6-inch sticks of wax, that's what Jeff and Dante's lives had been worth. It had all been for nothing. I had lost my share of the supplies when my backpack had been snatched from me in the Walmart parking lot. All the extra supplies in the wheelbarrow had been lost with Jeff. And all the stuff in Dante's backpack had been taken with him by the lurkers. The entire trip had been for nothing and had cost the lives of 2 of our group. What happened? Nadine demanded, staring coldly at me and Aaron. Tell us what happened. I want to hear everything. We took turns telling her and Clark everything that had happened after we had left the police station that morning. When we finished there was a long moment of silence. Nadine stood up and walked to one of the barred windows. She stood there, looking out at the blackness. How much ammo do we have left? Clark asked. It didn't take long to find out. The 3 of us, me, Aaron and Clark, stood around the police chief's desk, looking down at our nearly exhausted supply. 7 12-gauge rounds. 11 45 ACPs. 18 9mm. That pretty much says it all, doesn't it? Clark said quietly. There's not enough left to try for another supply run, Aaron said in a tone of utter hopelessness. We'd be dead for sure if we tried. Nadine, still standing at the window with her back to us, said in a hollow voice, we're already dead. She slowly turned to face us. Her cheeks were streaked with tears. We should just use those guns on ourselves and get it over with. It's better than waiting for the candles to run out or those things outside to get smart enough to find a way in here. There's gotta still be useful stuff here in town. Stuff close by we can. Aaron began. No. She thundered at him, her eyes blazing with rage. She was more furious than I had ever seen her. Even if by some miracle you found a stockpile of candles and batteries, then what, Aaron? Then what? How long do you want to keep living like this, if you can even call it living? Hiding here in this fucking prison, those monsters surrounding us, trapped in a dead, empty world, no hope of ever seeing our families or feeling the sun or eating food or being safe ever again? Is this what you want to risk your lives to keep fighting for? To survive one day in hell just to find yourself in the next? And the next? And the next? Meeting new people, getting to know them, only for them to end up dying? Never knowing if you're going to be next? I've been enduring this nightmare for 8 fucking years, Aaron. And that's probably a record. You've only been here 2. You think you know about survival, that you're some seasoned pro, well fuck you. You don't know the first thing about surviving. You don't even know some of the horrible things I've seen here. I had a boyfriend at one point. Someone I met who for once in my life wasn't a complete piece of shit. Someone I loved. You know what happened to him? We were being chased by those goddamn corpses and he ran off to draw them away so I had a chance of escaping. They tore him into pieces while I ran to save myself like a coward. I can still hear him screaming in my mind. You know how many people I've seen get killed? I saw a baby, a newborn baby, helpless, completely defenseless, and they. She slumped against the wall, collapsing, and started to sob. The 3 of us just looked at her, taken aback by her outburst, not knowing what to say. She wiped away her tears and fixed us with a stony expression. Dante and Jeff are lucky. They found the only real escape. Clark, Aaron and me looked at each other. And I could see in their eyes they were both thinking exactly what I was. Nadine was right. We would be better off dead. Even if what came after death was some hell even worse than this wretched half-state of existence, this living damnation. Clark suddenly groaned. He staggered back, putting a hand to his head. Clark? Aaron asked him, concerned. I don't feel. Clark began, sounding dazed. And then he collapsed, writhing in excruciating pain. Clark! Aaron screamed, and knelt by his side. Oh God, my head, it hurts so fucking bad. Clark wailed, his eyes squeezed shut in agony, his teeth bared. As I watched, all the color, the vitality, the life, seemed to faded from his skin, leaving it waxy and pale. What is it? What's wrong? Aaron screamed at him. I'm dying. Clark howled. I'm dying right now. He opened his eyes, looking at Aaron beseechingly. Please, he gasped through gritted teeth, imploring desperately, please Aaron, kill me now. Shoot me before I die. I don't want to turn like Lauren. I don't want to be one of them, even for a second. Aaron stood and grabbed one of the pistols from the desk. He quickly loaded a single round. All right, Clark, he said solemnly and chambered the round. He knelt and placed the barrel between Clark's eyes. He pulled the trigger. Posted by /Carl 1961. I had a near-death experience when I was 15. I know the truth about the afterlife. It's more terrifying than you can imagine. Part 10. Me and Aaron stood over Clark's corpse, looking at him in silent regard. He lay with a small round hole between and slightly above his eyes, a red puddle slowly spreading out from his head. He didn't liquefy into black slime like the residents did when you killed them. Maybe it was because he had still been human when he died. His eyes were closed and his expression was peaceful, maybe even relieved. I stared at him, imagining his mortal body in some other realm at this very moment, hooked up to life support machines in a hospital room, all his vital signs now negative, the shrill screech of an EKG as he flatlined. Maybe his family, assuming he had one, was gathered around him, their faces streaked with tears, a nurse covering him with a sheet, a priest there to offer spiritual consolation, assuring them that he was in a better place now. And who knew, maybe now he truly was. He sure wasn't an inhabitant of dead land anymore, and any place had to be an improvement over here. And then there were three, Aaron whispered beside me. I waited to hear Nadine's response, something cynical and sarcastic, but she said nothing. Gradually I registered that me and Aaron were alone in the candlelit room. I looked around. Hey, I said, where's Nadine? Aaron looked and saw she was gone. Nadine. He called out. Shit, where the hell did she go? She must have slipped out while we were busy with Clark, I said. Christ, what the fuck could she be doing? He said, grabbing a candle. He thrust it into my hand and took one for himself. Come on, we gotta go find her. We left the police's chief's office. We didn't have to look very long to find her. Over here, she calmly called to us from the end of the police station corridor. We looked, and froze. Nadine was standing in the lobby by the barricaded entrance doors. Residents were pounding and snarling behind the reinforced glass. They could see Nadine inside, living prey, and the sight was causing them to become increasingly agitated. Nadine smiled at us. It was a strangely serene smile, almost beautiful in a way. The smile of a woman who had finally found some measure of inner peace. In one hand she was holding a burning candle of her own. Her other hand was grasping the padlock securing the chains wrapped around the entrance door handles. The padlock had been unfastened, Nadine must have taken the key, and the chrome steel shackle of the lock was barely holding the ends of the chains together. We were stunned silent for a moment, then Aaron spoke. Nadine, he said, slowly and cautiously, what are you doing? It's better this way, Aaron. Better for all of us. We're just prolonging the inevitable. It'll be a horrible way to go, painful, but only for a few moments. Then it'll be over and we'll be free. Once and for all we'll be free. Her voice was very calm and resolved. It almost sounded sane. God damn it, Nadine, you don't know that. Aaron argued, trying to reason with her. What if dying just leads to something even worse? I'll take that chance, Nadine said, still smiling, then yanked off the padlock, releasing the chains. Instantly the door burst open and a horde of residents flooded into the station. Dozens of them. Hate life, hate living. Hate life, hate living. Holy shfived. Aaron screamed. Nadine was swarmed. They dragged her down, piling on top of her, ripping her apart. Her She never screamed. Not once. More residents poured into our former safe haven, charging in the direction of me and Aaron. Life. Hate life, hate living. Hate life, hate living. Aaron grabbed me by my arm and screamed into my face, "Back into the office. Hurry." We fled the invading horde down the corridor and dodged back into the police chief's office, slamming the door. Aaron locked the door, then looked at it. He was shaking with barely controlled panic. "This door won't hold them back for long, we gotta barricade it." His eyes darted wildly around the office. He pointed. "The desk. Help me move it." We struggled to lift the heavy oak desk and carried it to the door. The ammunition still piled on top rolled off and scattered in every direction. The frosted glass pane in the top half of the police chief's door shattered inward and half a dozen rotted arms reached in, grabbing for us. Hate life, hate living. We placed the desk against the door, but it only came up waist high, leaving the top half with the shattered window exposed. "Help me with this filing cabinet," Aaron ordered me. We lifted the filing cabinet and stacked it on top of the desk. It blocked the shattered window. We piled more stuff on the desk, a lamp, a chair, one of the cots, until we had it pretty well barricaded. We could still hear the crazed corpses screaming their endless, repetitive chant outside. Safe for the moment, we collapsed against the barricade to catch our breath. "That crazy fucking bitch," Aaron muttered in disbelief. "I can't believe she actually did that." "Maybe she thought she was doing us a favor," I offered. "We're trapped," Aaron said quietly, as if just realizing it himself. He looked at me, smiling bitterly. I saw there were tears in his eyes. "We're fucked, kid, you understand that, right? We are officially el fucko. There's gotta be something we can." I didn't finish. Even as I was speaking, Aaron's words were sinking in and I was realizing he was absolutely right. There was no way out of this. No avenues left we could pursue. Even if we could somehow escape the infested police station, we would still be trapped in dead land. There were only 2 of us left now. There was very little ammunition, even fewer candles, and no place we could take refuge. I saw just how utterly hopeless our situation was, and the weight of this realization threatened to overwhelm me. I realized I was starting to cry myself. "The way I see it, we got 3 options," Aaron said. 1. We can wait until they break through the barricade and let them kill us. 2. We can try fighting them off with whatever ammo we have left and wait until the candles run out and the shadow lurkers take us. Or 3. He took out his pistol, ejected the magazine, picked up 2 bullets off the floor, loaded them into the magazine, replaced the magazine and chambered a round. "Which sounds preferable to you?" he asked me. "Just make it quick," I told him. He placed the pistol between my eyes. "It was nice knowing you, kid." "Same," I told him, trying to keep the tremble out of my voice. I braced myself for the shot, wondering where I was going to wake up next time. He started to pull the trigger, but then stopped. He looked at me, at first puzzled, then shocked. "What is it?" I asked him. What's happening to you?" Aaron said. "What do you mean?" I asked him, confused. "Look at your hand, can't you see it?" I raised my hand to my eyes. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My hand was turning transparent. I could see the wall of the office through my palm. As I watched, bewildered, it grew more and more transparent and ghost-like, as if it was losing substance, fading out of reality. I realized it wasn't just my hand, my entire body was slowly turning invisible. "What the fuck is happening to me?" I screamed in panic. Aaron just looked at me with incomprehension. Then a new look dawned in his eyes. An expression I hadn't seen during my entire time in Dead Land. "Hope. Kid, I don't know for sure, I never saw this before, but I think maybe you're starting to wake up. Return to the land of the living." And as I was fading out of reality, reality was fading away around me. Aaron and the police chief's office were growing dim and hazy. I could feel myself drifting away, being pulled back to the living world, out of Dead Land. Aaron spoke to me one final time, his voice growing fainter with every word. "My ex-girlfriend's name is Anna Hastings. Find her if you can. Tell her she was right about me, I was a coward. We should have kept it. Tell her I'm..." But that was all I could make out. Aaron's voice faded to silence. The last thing I saw was Aaron raising the pistol to his own temple. Then he dissolved out of view. Everything dissolved. Once again I was plunged into blackness. Posted by you/Carl 1961. I had a near-death experience when I was 15. I know the truth about the afterlife. It's more terrifying than you can imagine. Epilogue. Once again I was floating weightlessly in the void, drifting like a feather through the silent blackness of oblivion. However, instead of falling downward for what seemed an eternity, now I was rising slowly upwards like a deep-sea diver ascending from the depths. The first sound I became aware of was a computerized beep, beep, beep at a steady, regular pace. The first physical sensation I became aware of was a throbbing pain in my head. The first smell I became aware of was the sterile chemical smell of a hospital. The first image I became aware of was a radiant bright whiteness that seemed to fill my vision like the light of heaven. As my blurry vision gradually cleared, it resolved into a fluorescent light fixture in the ceiling above me. I looked groggily down the length of my body and saw I was lying in a hospital bed and wearing a hospital gown, my bottom half covered with a sheet, assorted wires attached to various parts of my body, and 4-line tape to my inner arm. I reached up and gingerly touched the top of my aching skull. My upper head was encased in thick bandages. Beep beep beep. I heard a familiar voice cry out in shock that quickly became frantic joy. "He's awake. Oh, thank God, he's awake." It was my mother's anxious voice, nearly shouting in mingled relief and excitement. I glanced over and saw my parents sitting in chairs by my bed, both of them pale and worn, looking from exhaustion and worry. In a flash my parents were up and by my side, my mother seizing my arm in a fierce grip, weeping hysterically and saying my name over and over. I looked at them warily, my guard up, not quite ready to allow myself to believe that I was really awake and back in the land of the living. I distinctly remembered that nightmare I had experienced on the other side, when I had seemed to wake up safely back in my room and my mother had entered to check on me. I watched my parents' faces cautiously, expecting them to, at any second, begin shriveling up and drawing tight to their skulls, their lips peeling back from bare teeth, their eyes sinking into their skulls. But it never happened. I was truly awake and back home this time. And when the realization hit, I began weeping with relief myself and embraced my parents as I hadn't since I had been a small child. My parents summoned a nurse who then paged a doctor to come see me. He inspected me, shining a light in my eyes and asking me some questions. My full name, my parents' names, my address, my date of birth, etc. The final thing he asked me was what was the last thing I remembered before waking up in the hospital. I opened my mouth. I almost told him the truth, Aaron looking at me, smiling, happy for me but also sad, the pistol raised to his temple, but then bit down hard on the words. There was no point in getting into any of what I had experienced on the other side, in that hellish netherworld the denizens referred to as Dead Land. They wouldn't understand, wouldn't believe me, would tell me it had just been a bad dream, and for all I knew, perhaps that's all it had been. I told the doctor the last thing I remembered was the man with the bald, tattooed head and leather vest aiming his gun at me in the convenience store and pulling the trigger. I asked the doctor how long I had been unconscious and was floored by his response, almost 3 weeks. For 3 weeks I had hovered in a limbo between life and death, even though my entire ordeal in Dead Land had seemed to only last about a day and a half. The others had been right, time did pass strangely over there. The doctor explained to me that the bullet the gunman had fired had hit me in the upper forehead, about an inch above my left eye, but miraculously only fractured my skull without penetrating it or my brain before being deflected off my skull plate. But still, my injury had been very serious. The impact had caused a severe concussion and brain swelling the doctors had had to alleviate by performing surgery, opening my skull to remove the pressure from my brain. I asked the doctor just how close I had come to death. He was reluctant to answer at first, but after I insisted he relented and told me, "Very close. We weren't sure if we were going to bring you back." They hadn't been sure I would ever awaken from my coma, or if I would have brain damage when and if I did. The police came by a few hours after I woke from my coma to ask me some questions about what happened in the convenience store. I learned that after shooting me, the man with the gun had also turned his pistol on the clerk, who hadn't been so lucky and had died on the spot. The robber had gotten away before the police and paramedics arrived, but he was caught a couple months later holding up another convenience store in a different county. The guy, a meth head biker with a criminal record as long as a broom handle, was sentenced to 25 years for the murder of the convenience store clerk and the attempted murder of me. However, with good behavior, he could be up for parole in only half that amount of time. I never told anyone what happened to me during those 3 weeks I was in a coma. Not until now, anyway. I would love to tell you, and myself, none of it actually happened, that it was just some incredibly vivid, surreal nightmare I experienced following my surgery, but that would be a lie. You see, around the same time I was waking up in the intensive care unit, a different comatose patient in the same hospital, a 28-year-old man named Aaron Thomas, who had been on life support for almost 2 years following a suicide attempt, flatlined and died. 2 days earlier, Nadine Stantz, a 36-year-old prostitute and drug addict, who had been clinically brain dead and in a vegetative state for 8 years following an overdose, passed away. I guess that when you enter dead land, you retain the age you were when you arrived, even as your physical body continues to age. The same day Nadine died, Clark Stevenson, a 37-year-old auto mechanic and father of 4, died peacefully after lying in a coma for almost 6 months with a slow-growing but terminal brain tumor. 3 days before Clark, Dante Ferguson, a 27-year-old African-American who had been in a coma since Halloween, 2010 after a car accident that also claimed the lives of 3 friends, died. And a week before Dante died, 19-year-old Jeff Hewitt died after 4 months in a coma following an accident while swimming in a lake. I know all this because I looked them up online, their news articles and obituaries, their pictures. I looked up Aaron's ex-girlfriend, Anna Hastings, but couldn't bring myself to deliver his final message to her in person. She would have thought I was crazy or playing some cruel prank. Instead, I mailed an anonymous letter to her house telling her what he said. It was the least I could have done for him. It's been 7 years and I'm 22 now and about to graduate college. I have a girlfriend I love, and hope one day to make her my wife and have kids. I try to live every day to the fullest, try to make the most of every precious moment of this life here on earth. Because I know what awaits us all after death.